Okay, I think we should slowly get started. Welcome everyone. Good morning for those who are in our time zone, and welcome to today's webinar on nature-based solutions and governance pathways for climate resilient cities. We're thrilled to have you join us for this timely and important conversation. And this is the last one in this series of 4 webinars that we were organizing at the Istanbul Policy Center this year. I would like to thank Istanbul Policy Center for providing us with this platform and the opportunity to host our guests. So today we are honored to have Daniela Rizzi, who is from ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, which is a global network of more than 2,500 local and regional governments committed to sustainable urban development. Daniela is a senior expert on biodiversity and nature-based solutions with more than 15 years experience in working on nature-related issues in cities and beyond. One of her aims is to close the policy science practice gap, which I think is very important. So we are really happy to have her. Unfortunately, Nikki Francescaki will not be able to join us because of a family health emergency. So hopefully we can have a conversation with her in the future. And we wish her and her family quick recovery. So just a bit of introduction. As cities around the world face the mounting pressure of climate change, ranging from heat waves and flooding to biodiversity loss and social inequity, there's growing recognition that we need more holistic, inclusive, and sustainable responses. Nature-based solutions offer a powerful framework to do just that, integrating natural systems into urban planning to reduce climate risks, enhance ecosystems, and improve quality of life. And not just for humans, but also for more than human beings. So that's also something to keep in mind. But solutions are only as strong as the systems that support them. So that's why in today's webinar, we will be focusing on governance issues that enable these solutions to take root, especially those that center community leadership, cross-sector collaboration, and justice-informed approaches. So as I said, we are very happy to have Daniela with us for this conversation. And at the end of our conversation, we will basically take comments and questions from the audience. So please make sure to type your questions in the Q&A box so that we could also address those at the end of this conversation. Overall, I think we will have an hour in total for the conversations. We're very happy to have you join us. Welcome, and I guess we can begin. So, Daniela, I would like to start by asking you the question of why do cities need to fundamentally rethink their design and function in the face of climate change? And how do nature-based solutions help reframe urban sustainability transitions?
Oh, thank you so much, Zeynep, for having me today. It's a pity that we don't have Nikki. We're all thinking of her and her family, that everything is well. And yeah, thank you for everybody who joined this webinar. Yeah, very happy to answer this question. First of all, before I jump into it, I just want to say that I think nature-based solutions, I have been saying that a lot in different interviews and also in the projects. I think NBS, they are actually not only, how can I say, the past, they are the present and the future. And I really hope that policymaking can, as much as possible, push for their upscaling. And I will say why. I think they are so important and so relevant for us. So maybe we can answer that question thinking about also like the roles of cities. So I am from ICLEI Europe, so I represent a city network. And as you know, the cities, they are really on the front lines, right, of the climate crisis. They face numerous risks related to infrastructure, public health, but also social cohesion. So we have a lot of problems of social cohesion in cities. And to remain livable and to remain resilient in face of so many crises that we're facing, we have to rethink, the whole way we design cities. So we have to move from gray and linear models, and we have to start thinking about regenerative and nature positive approaches. So that's why NBS are so, they match here, because they offer not just individual solutions, but they offer a whole new paradigm of how cities can actually function. So they can restore the connection between, urban systems and the natural cycles. NBS can deliver multiple co-benefits. We talk a lot about co-benefits when we talk about NBS, because they're never only unifunctional, they're always multifunctional. And of course, they can help us with the climate crisis, the biodiversity crisis, even, the whole problem related to the pollution crisis. It can help us a lot. So yeah, so just for a start, and maybe, I don't know if everybody is acquainted with what nature-based solutions are, so maybe just 2-3 sentences on that sense. So nature-based solutions have been really defined, and there was the IUCN, the definition, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, in 2015 or /16, 2016. And then the European Commission also defined nature-based solutions, also around these years, actually 2015. And then we have, since 2022, so 3 years in now, we have the definition of the UNEA. And that's what we call a multilaterally agreed definition. So that's the definition that we also use in the European nature-based solutions projects, because that's the one that is most accepted by different countries and the continents. And basically, we're talking about these solutions that they span over different ecosystems. So it's about cities, of course, urban ecosystems, but it's also about forests, about dunes, about the whole coastal systems, mangroves, about also wetlands, peatlands. So it actually goes beyond, right, the perimeter of cities. And we're talking even about nature itself, that's type 1 of NBS. That's the one that where we have less intervention from humans. Then we have type 2, where you have a hybrid solution, where you have the management of forests, for example, where you have human interventions there to make sure that the ecosystems keep working, but we also have economic activities happening in the systems. And then we have type 3, which is basically where you have new nature where there was none anymore. So think about here roofs that become green roofs, or you have green walls applied to buildings and cities, or you have depaving. For example, you might have a parking lot where you had the whole parking lot being depaved and opened out of asphalt, and the soil was freed up. That's also considered type 3. So just for a start, just to position what nature-based solutions are, and you get, some, I can also show maybe some slides later for you to have the images in your head. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for the definition. And also the types that we are actually referring to when we're talking about, what spaces we are actually talking about. Would it be possible for you to give us maybe 1 or 2 examples from different contexts, so that it could actually make more sense as to what nature-based solutions might look like? Because I know that in the Turkish context, for instance, Izmir, for instance, was a part of an EU project where they actually rewilded a waterway that became a green corridor. The water was there before, but they basically depaved, as you said, around it. made some bike paths and tried to also implement issues like sponge cities, and also tried to use the coastal area to reactivate sort of, certain types of plants that would actually be saltwater resilient. So different types of different examples can come to mind, but just maybe one or two examples that you think were very successful or that made a real difference, or maybe not, the total opposite, that actually didn't work, might actually also, act like make a better sense or provide better understanding for our audience. You are muted, Daniela, also.
Yes, I was trying to find a button because I have a small screen today. Maybe
Okay.
to show you that, I'm going to share my screen. So that's why I
Mhm.
was a bit surfing around.
Yeah.
Just confirm to me when I press share, Zainab, if you can
Yeah,
see the
it's
screen.
starting to share. Yeah, we can see that right
Oh,
now.
super. So
Mhm.
I just wanted to show you because it always helps, to teach people how to fish instead of giving them the fish. So we have this database, and there are many out there. I can put some links for you on the chat.
Mhm.
But there is this database of case studies from Network Nature, and that's a project. I can say some words about it later. But you see here 593 cases from around the whole world. And you can filter per region. You can, click directly in the map and it will take you. And if you go down here, you can, press the different types of NBS and read more about them. So let's go to this one. This keeps changing the whole time. So this is just like, how can I say? It's just by luck that it was the first one here. And you can see this hybrid dunes in Barcelona. And then you can read about the region where it's inserted. It's a project here. In this case, it's a large-scale project with 50 kilometers south of Barcelona. And you can see the different, impacts and benefits that the dunes actually play, for people and for nature. So it's very important to understand here in the concept that it's not only an environmental concept. We're always talking about benefits in terms of environment, in terms of social gains, and in terms of also economic gains, right? So they go into the transferability of the result to other areas that have similar conditions. They talk about the lessons learned. And in this case, they don't have key performance indicators. But if you click in other examples, you would go much deeper in terms of, the information that is available there. And so maybe one that I can mention that I really, really love to mention is there is in Stuttgart, that is a city, I can even maybe try to find it here. It's a city placed in Germany. And it has these corridors that were built in the middle of the city in terms of green corridors, but they were studying the how can I say, the repercussions in terms of wind movement. So they call it the cooling corridors, and many people would not think, but Stuttgart can get very, very, very hot in the summer, and we know through climate adaptation efforts how important it is to adapt the reality of urban environments, but also other ecosystems to the changing temperatures that we're facing. So I found that a very interesting project from Stuttgart because they not only thought about the green corridor in terms of, the birds moving and the wildlife moving, but also in terms of cooling. And they really did modelings around that, and they measured the temperature of the city, what it would be without these corridors, the neighborhoods, surrounding these corridors, these canyons, even you can call it wind canyons in a way. And what would it be without them? So that's one interesting case that I like to mention because it's very clear, this multifunctional aspect of it. And I can also put in the chat for people to visualize. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very important. Thank you. Um, and I wanted to sort of ask you from ICLE's perspective, what does it take for cities to adopt nature-based solutions at scale and integrate them into mainstream policy? So how does ICLE as an organization help cities move from isolated projects to systemic transformation through nature-based approaches? Because I mean, most of the Horizon 2020 projects or other projects that are externally funded require cities to have, let's say, pilot projects and so on. But how do we go beyond those pilots and actually bring about real transformation that would be long lasting and also maybe sort of, address the future planning processes or being integrated into future planning processes to make a real change for the future, for livable cities, for, yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, Zainab. That's very, very important question. And I must say that I would say 10 years ago, I did not see the importance of policy as much as I see it today with the experiences I had. Policy, guys really, really know this. Policy is really important. And the reason why it is so important is because it actually unlocks financing mechanisms. It unlocks the energy needed in terms of resources, not only in terms of, money, but also in terms of capacity building, in terms of, the political energy needed. It unlocks that for the said topic. So if I think about a bit like ICLE's perspective as a city network, what we try to do is make sure that we move beyond project-based thinking. So, and we go towards an integrated approach. So we try as much as we can to embed NBS in core municipal strategies, in land use planning, and infrastructure investments. So I'll give an example here. If a city is investing in housing, we should not in 2025 be building housing units without incorporating nature-based solutions in the planning, right? Because you unlock a lot of resources to build the housing, but if you do it without thinking about the shading, the corridors in terms of the wind movement, and also in terms of health and well-being, that these greening brings to people. So you should not be designing these units in 2025 without thinking about NBS. And to make sure that that's that way, we have to make some kind of regulation or binding frameworks in terms of policy so that you don't have, architects, landscape architects, or developers doing it the wrong way. And another very powerful way that we think is to embed nature-based solutions in climate action plans, and also raise very much the importance of biodiversity plans. So biodiversity, as you know, usually it gets less attention from let's say from lobby or in terms of also resources. You can see that because we have a climate COP every year, and we have a biodiversity COP every 2 years. It is in Europe, by the way, next year. So put it in your calendars. It's in Yerevan. Armenia is going to run the biodiversity COP next year. Yeah, and it's so important to, to raise the importance of biodiversity in all these policy discussions as much as we can. Yeah. Maybe just to finish this part, I think it also requires very strong political leadership. So there are other soft ways to do this. If they're not through plans and through frameworks and regulations, we can also work on, in terms of inspiring politicians. We can also have a very robust institutional capacity so that people in cities know how to implement NBS, know the definition, know that you cannot leave biodiversity out because biodiversity is at the heart of the definition. We need cross departmental collaboration. So stop working in silos, have the Department of Environment speaking to the Department of Entrepreneurship and enterprises, and speaking to the Department of Health, and have all these departments collaborating with one another and enabling the conditions so that the community can engage, that they can give their feedback, and also enable conditions in a safe way for private sector participation. So in a way that, cities don't fall like, how can I say, they don't get in a weird position with the private sector, that they can still protect, the interest of the collectivity, but also work together with the private sector. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. ICLEI works with, cities across different development contexts. So I was wondering, how does governance capacity impact the success of nature-based solutions? So you said, that in most cities, I guess, there are different departments and that they normally work in silos, but climate change especially has forced us to rethink these different departments. And in many of the cities I've actually carried out fieldwork, there are attempts to have a coordinating body or a department that would actually try to get feedback from all the different departments and involve them in the planning and execution, such that there is coordination among different departments. Because when you talk about climate change, it does not just touch like one department or one policy area, but it's sector, multifaceted, and so on and so forth. So I was wondering if it doesn't necessarily have to do with the income level of the city, because we sometimes see that very low income cities, or low resources, can actually engage communities or engage different parties, civil society organizations, and then create a real impact that sometimes is lacking from cities that may be more wealthy. So I was just wondering, can you give us maybe one or two successful examples that have actually put these different resources into use to bring about change?
Absolutely, Zainab. I would say that, as you said, governance capacity is really absolutely critical. And the crisis now, they're so complex that it requires us, to shift from the siloed to a collaborative governance system. So that means really across not only departments, but also sectors, types of professionals, and also scales, right? So many cities, unfortunately, they do lack ambition. So some cities, they're very used to work in a traditional way. So it's difficult for them to, open up. And it's also about giving away power sometimes. So if you have a very powerful department in a city, it would not like to have a less powerful department on the table co-deciding where the budget goes and where the energy should go, right? In terms of investments and resources. But there are cities that are very ambitious. And as you said, sometimes it's really surprising. These are not like the rich big cities. Sometimes these are smaller cities, right? And I would like to mention two examples here. One is Cascais in Portugal. It has evolved from isolated types of nature-based solutions, pilots, to embedding nature-based approaches in the whole strategic urban planning of the city. And this progress has been really supported by multi-stakeholder platforms and alignment with climate resilience and public health goals. And it's actually a city that is quite active in many what we call nature-based solutions hubs. So I guess these type of, I mentioned here before I go to the second example, network nature, because it is a community of people working with nature-based solutions. So people that are very experienced, the ones that are actually newbies, they're coming into it only now, getting to know what it is. And then you have cities that are active there. You have academics, you have enterprises, because you need to do the marriage between demand and supply. So if a city wants to implement nature-based solutions and there are no enterprises out there that have, the services and the products to be offered, you cannot make it fly. So you need both. Right. And such a platform as Network Nature, you can have a city as Cascais being very active there to, get in touch with this community and with this type of knowledge. Then another city that I would like to mention is Bologna in Italy. It has actually integrated nature-based solutions within a wider co-creation process. So it has been actively engaging citizens, planners, businesses, and universities, and they put up a lot of innovation through Horizon projects. So they are very active in different Horizon projects. They get in touch with new knowledge, and they're very good at translating that, to their local languages and local situations. And you see a lot of things happening now on the ground in Bologna in that sense. So yeah, so we try to support this kind of enabling governance ecosystem for innovation. Because if you don't have the different actors together being excited about this, then the chances that things happen are smaller. So actually you need people that are excited about this and they trust the results, and they have access to the peer-reviewed articles, to the monitoring schemes, to the impacts. They have access to all this information in an easy way, and platforms can help to translate that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important. And I was also thinking about when you were talking about different key stakeholders in this whole process. Sometimes there are also, I mean, and I was wondering, like, since you're more familiar with the general sort of database or a universe of nature-based solution implementing cities, I was wondering what your view on this was. Last webinar we were talking to Elena from Ecuador, and she was giving the example of how citizen initiatives or civil society organizations, not necessarily formal NGOs, but just groups coming together that have concerns, were actually pushing the municipalities to rewild parks that would create better, resources for maintaining or regenerating biodiversity sometimes. So I was wondering to what extent, like, we can see also bottom-up processes pressuring municipalities or cities to actually then undertake such, nature-based solutions and integrating them into their planning processes.
Yeah, just a second. Could you repeat the last part of the sentence? I had a little bit of you cutting off.
Okay, yeah. So I was wondering if there are like examples that you can think of where bottom-up pressures that come from civil society and then basically ask the municipality or the city government to actually respond to needs or demands to increase biodiversity, to rewild urban parks that may not be, that may be very sterile in terms of their biodiversity contributions and so on and so forth. So can you think of examples where it's not just the global norms and planning, through experts, but more bottom-up civil society is sort of, I guess, encouraged and pressuring the city government that lead to such projects or such transitions in the urban context?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this is very important because we don't want to say that this can only be administration-led, right? Nature-based solutions, and I saw one of the questions here. These are solutions that can be actually, how can I say, demanded from the upper board, from the administration of a city, but it can be equally be demanded from the citizens, the inhabitants of a neighborhood, right? And they can be then, let's say the people see the value first, and then they bring it up to politicians, and then politicians grab that, and then they roll out a program. So it can happen the other way around. I would say here, there is a very interesting example from in Poland. There is the city of Poznan. That city is actually quite active as an administration, but, and I'll say a big but here, there is like they have many kindergartens in that city, and these kindergartens, they have inner courts for the kids to play. And so what they did was, together with the teachers, with the people from the neighborhood, they started discussing the redesign of these courts, you know, these inner areas, outdoors for the kindergarten, so that it gets actually more trees, more bushes, you know, more green, more nature. And they kind of asked up so that these areas can be used by the communities in the weekends, so that they are not closed, you know, there are the green places in that sad neighborhood, and then people from the neighborhood can also benefit from them during the weekends. So you see here, there is a very clear added value for the local neighborhood. And therefore, you know, this wasn't something done only by the people working in the departments, right? It was also an inspiration from people on the ground who said, hey, look, we could also benefit from this, right? Instead of having these kindergartens closed during the weekends, we can also have the benefits in terms of health. Our kids can also go play there, but we can also go there, you know, enjoy a very, you know, fresh place during a very hot month of, you know, the year. So yeah, so that is one. There are others, right? There are other examples where you even have crowdfunding. So people are so keen to engage and to make things change that they're willing even to pay, you know, for that. So there is a very strong crowdfunding platform in Scotland, and they I think it's called My Park Scotland. I can check the name again and then I can put it in the chat. But it shows that, you know, you have this pressure, even in terms of resources, you know, to say, okay, municipality, you're too slow. If you're not doing this, our folks are doing it. Here's the money. We're going to do it. Right? So yeah, that shows really like the power of bottom up, right?
Yeah. And I'm assuming, I mean, there might be parts of the world where this does not, I mean, instead of a crowdfunding, people could actually also contribute with their labor in their spare time, you know, these kind of more traditional ways of doing things together that don't necessarily require large funding, but just, you know, labor power, and that can also work out for interventions. Yeah, one question.
Maybe just an example on that, because I think that's a very important point that you brought, Zeynep, that is not only about the, you know, monetary resources, it's about the, you know, the resources from people as well. Maybe one example in that sense, I know that there is this huge project in Rio de Janeiro, where they actually in the favelas, in the scatters of Rio de Janeiro, they started doing urban gardenings. And this actually started with a champion from one neighborhood, and that had a very good relationship with somebody from the city in terms of like working relationship and trust. And then they were able to upscale this project. And if you look at the images today, there are huge urban gardening, how can I say, corridors happening and crossing multiple favelas in Rio de Janeiro. And
Mhm.
that project is so interesting because during Corona, people were really like struggling in terms of they cannot get out of their houses. There was a very, very strict policy, you know, to hold people back home. And this project actually brought food to the table of many,
Mhm.
many, many people.
Mhm.
Without it, maybe they would not have gotten fresh vegetables, you know,
Mhm.
for a certain period of time.
Yeah.
So it's also strong in terms of resilience, right, to crisis, such as
Yeah.
the one that we had with COVID-19.
Yeah. Yeah. Very important. Thank you. So one maybe final question I have, and then we'll go to the Q&A, is what is the role of global city networks like the one that you work for, like ICLE, but there are others, you know, that we see that work on different issues. But what is the impact of such networks in creating a momentum for local change? And are there any initiatives or collaborations that have been very influential in terms of nature-based solutions and or climate justice, for instance, as far as you can observe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think global networks, and here I'm mentioning ICLE, but there are many others out there, and we really hope that we can have many, many other networks. I think they can connect, you know, cutting edge knowledge, new you know, things that people found out at work, innovations, practical tools. They can connect these with people that are looking for the solutions.
Mm-hmm.
They can also help unlock funding opportunities, right? That people get the knowledge or, okay, where are the calls of the World Bank for nature-based solutions? Where are the calls, you know, in terms of research and innovation in Europe that, you know, the Horizon Europe program can pay for? Then in terms of facilitating also peer learning, so there are lots of, how can I say, city to city exchanges. And it's really nice to see when two cities really like learn from each other, because they can sometimes recognize the same problems, you know, or they can say, oh, you guys solved that problem in that way. And then you can try to bring that to your own city and discuss, oh, but the city of, you know, Istanbul is doing that there. And why could we not here in Milan try something similar? And, you know, so these kind of city exchanges are very valuable. And then I think city networks, they can also help translate, you know, they can be like a knowledge broker in a way, and translate global targets like the Global Biodiversity Framework or the Sustainable Development Goals, you know, so you have this big, you know, the Paris Agreement, and then you can translate that into local action. So, and then I think they can be catalytic as well, because they can also show to newspapers, you know, to the wider public, look, I don't know if people know this, but there's like 900 million euros have been invested in Horizon Europe in NBS projects. So now like the Network Nature platform has 96 NBS projects that are active as we speak in Europe, right? Or have been active. So that's almost 100 projects at this point in time. So it helps us to show also the impact, right? And then you can also, in these initiatives, you can have capacity building programs. So to make sure that, you know, you can build capacity in different regions and in different hubs. So yeah, and then the last thing I want to mention, there's something called the Berlin Urban Nature Pact. And that's called Berlin Urban Nature Pact because the city of Berlin was the one who started it, but it's actually a global initiative. And the idea of that pact is that you have very ambitious cities committing to unfold ambitious biodiversity targets. So they don't have the small targets, they have big targets, right? And they are really like the ones saying, okay, I'm gonna do the whole marathon, you know, for NBS. And they kind of like push smaller cities, bigger cities that are not doing the work yet to do it, right? And join the network. So these initiatives are very, powerful.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Daniela. So now maybe we can turn over to our questions from the audience. So the first question in the Q&A box is about how do indigenous approaches to nature-based solutions for combating climate change differ from mainstream environmental strategies in terms of values, methods, and the long-term impact? Would you be able to say a few words about that?
Yeah, I guess I would like to mention here, Sinem, the IPBES transformative change assessment. I think that document very, very brilliantly captures that when you talk about nature, you have different values, you have different structures, and you have different practices. So that's a very, very comprehensive report that just came out. And it really shows that there is no right or wrong. There are different, belief systems. There are different ways to value nature. For me, the value of nature can be one. For you, it can be another one, right? So I guess, and here I want to highlight in that report, they take into account also the wisdom and the knowledge of indigenous communities. And in terms of Europe, if you think about Europe as a continent, I'm Brazilian, so I can talk a lot about indigenous communities from South America. But here in Europe, you might not have as many, but then you have local communities, right? You have traditional knowledge that has to be honored. And I think that the nature-based solutions discourse more and more is embracing that kind of knowledge and actually honoring it. So I see that because in more and more conferences, you have people speaking that they were not invited to speak 10 years ago. So now they do have four and they can speak and they can teach. And there's another point that is to bring that to universities. So why is only the knowledge of environmentalists important that are being brought at universities? What about the whole knowledge from people that have been working with nature-based practices for millennia? So how to turn that into knowledge that can also be taught in the systems, that in the educational systems that we have today. So I think this is more and more. And the Global Biodiversity Framework pushes for that as well. So it's written in the global targets.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much. So now we have a question by Hüseyin Korkmaz, who is asking whether what we are talking about here is a policy intervention or a technical intervention. Maybe
That's a
just
very good
briefly.
question.
Yeah.
So nature-based solutions are interventions, really, right? Like you can have a wetland, you can have a constructed wetland, you can have a green wall, a green roof. So right, but policy is very important to upscale nature-based solutions, to make sure that they are not an isolated, case somewhere in a city, but to bring that to the whole neighborhood, to the whole city, to the cities that are surrounding that city, to the region. You need policy, right? So that you have what went well, what didn't go well, how you should do what recommendations, So that's why policy is so important for nature-based solutions. So yeah, that's a very good question.
Yeah. And then I think we already talked about the role of NGOs, but there's a question by Erdal Onurdiktaş about the role of NGOs in this transformation in Europe. Do you want to say a few words maybe to address the question?
Yeah, we cannot do it without NGOs. And I must say, I think nature-based solutions have a very strong collaborative DNA because it is by nature something that has co-benefits, right? So you have to learn how to speak different languages for different groups, and engage different groups also in the development of knowledge and to make sure that this happens, right? So in this sense, NGOs have a very important role, as does citizens, academia, cities, regional governments, but also why not the private sector? So you need all these people, and you need even standardization bodies to be part, of the stakeholder group, so that you can replicate these solutions with safety and with quality.
Great. And then we have Beyza Sarıkoç, who is asking, İKLİ's advisory work with municipalities, how is climate justice addressed? How are issues of social equity and justice integrated into policies, especially in adaptation strategies?
Yeah, thanks for that, Beyza. So İKLİ, we do have a big NBS team. Big, I don't know what means big, but we are almost 20 people. If you count the interns, we are 20. And then we also have a justice team. So what we do a lot is the nature-based solution team works a lot with the justice team. And that team is actually pretty much cross-cutting because it works with, different teams in İKLİ Europe. So the mobility team, it works with the procurement team, it works with the energy team, different teams, right? But we ourselves have in our own team very, very knowledgeable staff in terms of ecological justice, and not only ecological, but in terms of distributing, because a lot of the critique that nature-based solutions have gotten, if you see that appears in many of the brochures, the glossy brochures, is that building in Milan. You probably know what I'm talking about, the Bosco Verticale in Milan. And the problem is that there is a lot of critique to that solution, that it actually pushed the prices of the neighborhood like really, really up, and people had to be, moved to other neighborhoods. So there was a gentrification process happening there. And then people would say, oh my God, if you bring nature-based solutions, you're going to gentrify the tissue, the urban tissue, and then people are going to be forced out if they cannot, afford to stay there. So therefore, there is a lot of work being done in these projects and also in municipalities and in our own team in terms of, okay, how can you put in place justice, procedures so that you can counteract that. And here there is the work of Angelovski, that's a professor from Barcelona. She has been doing amazing work. She has a platform that is actually for free, where you can have access for different approaches that were applied to avoid green gentrification.
Thank you very much. So we have Onur Özmen's question about what are some of the root causes or the points of resistance and obstacles we face at the level of structure from municipalities, governments, or capital owners when we try to put nature-based solutions into policy or action?
Yeah, thanks, Onur. I guess we really work tirelessly, but there is a lot of resistance in some, more in some departments more than in others. But I would say that the biggest resistance is because people are used to do things in a certain manner. So they are used to trust gray engineering solutions. And I don't want to say that nature-based solutions can substitute everything that gray infrastructure does. We do need green infrastructure, gray and green infrastructure, right, for different things. And we can work with hybrid solutions, that they are neither gray nor green, they're both actually. But to shift the heads of people, decision makers in cities, to do green solutions instead of the gray infrastructure ones that they have been doing for decades, is sometimes quite difficult. And I would say that one of the biggest obstacles here is procurement. So procurement, if not everybody in the room knows what it is, it's like how the city buys the services, how it contracts the professionals, right? And if you have a procurement sheet that only lists materials that are, you know, gray infrastructure materials for a park, for a road, you know, for doing buildings, then it's very difficult to shift, you know, this to nature-based solutions related procurement. So that's why we also have to work with procurers to
Yeah.
change the patterns.
Yeah, great idea. I mean, there was one example when I was doing fieldwork that the procurement office was so used to procuring trees and plants from the cheapest sources and not necessarily local varieties that it was actually they were forced to do that, but once they realized, okay, local varieties may be more expensive, but they're going to lead to less demand for irrigation, therefore they last longer. So it's definitely a mind shift that one needs. So we have a question by Özlem Aslan on the social justice policies. I think we touched upon that, so maybe we'll jump over to Merve Ateş Eren's question. But if you have any other, because she said that she really liked the favela example, and if you have any more ideas about how this like green gentrification can be prevented and more socially just examples can be promoted. I don't know if you want to say a few words about that.
Yeah, maybe, Özlem, maybe one thing that I could mention for you is that I'm really excited about that. So Brazil signed, it was some months ago, it's actually quite fresh. 3 ministries in Brazil signed a program called Green Resilient Cities, Cidades Verdes Resilientes, yeah. And that program has a very strong arm in favelas. And they are trying to push for nature-based solutions in favelas. So there's a really organized program by the government, backed up by the ministries, so at national level, that is pushing for that. And that is really bonkers, I would say, because it's not something that you would actually expect, but there were people that saw that there was work being done in favelas by some local people. And favelas, I don't know if you know, but these are the places in cities that usually have less trees. They're very dense, they're very hot. Sometimes you have temperatures differing in 10 degrees between rich neighborhoods and favelas. It's really, so to have this program there in these areas, it's so important for the quality of life and for actually changing the way people, interact with their own environment and have better health. And so it's very important. And I don't know, I was trying to check, Zeynep, if I can put some links in the chat, and I can't. But I could actually, put a link to that program.
Okay, I mean, I think it should work out.
It should work. I tried, and it only says
to if you can share, just get everyone if it allows you. If not, you can send it to me and I can share it with everyone.
I have only hosts and panelists and you, so I will send it to you.
Just send it to me and I'll share it.
Yeah, perfect.
No problem. Okay, great. So while we're at that, I will switch to Merve's question. So she said that while she was listening to us, she was checking which municipalities from Turkey were members of ICLE, and she said that she never really heard of these municipalities in relation to their work on climate change or nature-based solution like attempts. So basically, local governments in Turkey are willing to appear as members of such networks because of prestige, because of, the trends, I guess, also. Although change does not necessarily occur in practice in terms of understanding of urban planning and management. How can we avoid these attempts if they are, how can we make sure that these are genuine attempts? Trying to implement nature-based solutions. Does ICLE or nature-based solution team have mechanisms to communicate more directly to the people so that norms and ideas can change at the local level? is the
Oh,
question.
that's a very nice question. Yeah. I think that one way to have this quality control, or let's say, make sure that they're genuine interest and not greenwashing, right? I think that's also a little bit what we're trying to avoid here. Is that I find that in these Horizon projects the European projects that we have been doing, it's really nice because you don't exchange only with the city, with the municipality, but you also exchange with local NGOs. You have webinars or workshops happening in the neighborhood with the people on the ground. So you get to hear, from beyond the city's perspective. And that's really important because it's like a little bit of a reality check. And I think for these projects, why am I mentioning these projects? Because you need resources for that, right? And then also sometimes we talk about groups that are marginalized and that usually they would not have the time to come to such meetings. So there are actually mechanisms where you can actually pay for them to come, right? In a way that you can offer something during such a meeting, so that they would come. You can offer, I don't know, a lunch, or you can do a how to say, a kind of a party or a festival, or offer something for them in return of their time to come and think with you about something. So I think that's very important. And I do think there is work being done in Turkey, not in this project I'm working specifically, but I will put in the chat to Zeynep the Network Nature. We have this study case database, and I'm sure that there are also Turkish examples. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Daniela. So our last question actually, okay, we have one more because I was thinking Baran Uncu's question is actually something we have addressed with respect to how can green gentrification be anticipated and prevented. If you want to say something more on that, you're more than welcome. But we have a last question. By Erdal Onur Diktaş. Are traces of Jamie Lerner's old mayor of Curitiba works on urban sustainability in Brazil still remain?
Okay, let me just of course. Yes, so Jaime Lerner did a lot of work with Curitiba, with his, the whole idea of urban sustainability there. And I think now I would say that you have taken his legacy, and people have worked more and more with that legacy. And I say, yes, he's a very respected urbanist in Brazil still. And now even more, I see people talking about, ecological urbanism and nature-based solutions. That term is starting to get more and more important, also because the government has picked it up now. And so you see, these ideas getting stronger and stronger. And also maybe one thing to mention, last year we had terrible floods in the south of Brazil. There were really, really they hit the millions of people that were displaced in the south of Brazil due to very, very bad floods. And in that discussion for the reconstruction of these cities, nature-based solutions have been, a lot discussed now. So they are now there together with the gray infrastructure competing, for the attention. And I guess this is a good development, right? So we're not there yet where we want to be, but we see that there is a shift, there is a change, and there is more distrust in relation to what green infrastructure alone can do, and more trust in combining solutions. I guess that's the shift that we had after the floods. Yeah.
Okay. Great. I think we have now addressed, I don't see any new questions coming in. And we are kind of right on time, actually. Thank you very much to everyone who joined us for the discussion. I've tried to paste the links that Daniela shared with me on the chat. Hopefully everyone can access them. There's another one, and I'll put that in as well. Yeah, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Daniela for joining us and for everyone with their questions and comments on enriching this discussion. Obviously, there are lots more issues to discuss, but maybe in the future we'll organize another series. Again, I would like to thank all the participants in all of these 4 webinars in contributing to my studies, but also to the general sort of understanding of how to make cities be more resilient, more just, and more able to address climate change challenges, and sometimes even work to prevent some of those from happening. So yeah, thanks a lot. And thanks to IPC, Istanbul Policy Center at Sabancı University for making this happen. Yes, so have a good rest of the day, and thank you, Daniela. And yeah, hopefully we'll intersect in other occasions as well.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much for